Imagine trying to fix like a horribly jammed printer.
Oh, the worst.
Right. You've got paper accordion folded in the rollers, ink smudging literally everywhere, and you're frantically flipping through this dry IT manual, just trying to figure out how to clear the queue.
Yeah, we've all been there panicking in the office.
Exactly. But now I want you to imagine that the jammed printer is actually your own mouth in the middle of a super high-stakes conversation. And the IT manual you're using to fix it, it was written by a crystal mystic. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It is quite the collision of worlds, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, usually when we talk about reading a technical manual, there's this expectation of, dry, rigid precision, like input A goes to output B.
Right. Highly logical.
Yeah, but then you step into the world of metaphysics or spiritual healing or crystal guides, and suddenly that technical manual is just, it's thrown completely out the window. We're usually looking at a landscape that is almost entirely described in like poetry or vague feelings, mystical, muddy waters.
Yeah, it's the absolute definition of a subjective experience. Usually you're just told to, hold a stone and kind of feel the vibes.
Which is exactly why the material we're exploring today is so unusual. So we're digging into this really fascinating document from a source called Crystals by Rob, and it details the metaphysical properties of this pale sky blue stone called Angelite. But here's the twist. While almost every crystal guide out there uses that flowery language we just talked about, this specific text reads like a hardcore engineering and IT manual.
It really does. It's wild.
It uses like technology and architectural terminology to explain exactly how this stone works. It actually frames the human mind and spirit as an operating system, and it directly refers to you, the reader, as a soul architect.
It's a highly effective reframing, I think. And, it's important to note right up front, whether you are a totally devoted crystal enthusiast with like a pocket full of stones right now,
right,
or an absolute hardened skeptic who thinks this is all just pretty rocks, the mental model we're analyzing today is genuinely brilliant.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's fundamentally about processing information overload, avoiding burnout, and communicating with absolute precision in really high-stress environments.
Okay, so before we get into the tech specs of the soul, what actually is Angelite in the physical world? Like, what are we looking at?
Well, physically speaking, Angelite is a form of anhydrite, which is basically just calcium sulfate.
Okay.
Its name comes directly from the Greek word angelos, meaning messenger or angel, which reflects its very soft, kind of ethereal, sky blue look.
It's pretty.
It is. But it's an incredibly delicate stone in the mineral kingdom. It'll actually dissolve if you leave it in water.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, it's that fragile.
So,
but the source material argues that while it is physically delicate, it is vibrationally highly functional. The text doesn't just call it a healing crystal. It literally defines it as a high-frequency communication protocol.
Okay, let's unpack this. Calling a rock a communication protocol is like a massive pivot from typical spiritual writing.
Huge pivot.
To understand how a stone could even act as a protocol, we first have to understand the hardware it's supposedly running on, right?
Exactly.
So this framework defines the human operating system through what it calls input and output nodes. It completely maps the traditional chakra system onto like a computer architecture model, specifically focusing on the sixth chakra, the third eye, and the fifth chakra, which is the throat.
What's fascinating here is how the mysticism is entirely stripped away from the third eye.
Yeah.
It's treated simply as an input processor. In this architecture, the third eye node isn't about, having magical visions of the future. It's your high bandwidth download port.
I love that phrasing. High bandwidth download port.
Right. It is the part of your brain and spirit responsible for pattern recognition, visual synthesis, and receiving what the text calls intuitive data streams.
So think about the last time you had a gut feeling that you ignored. You're looking at a situation, maybe a job offer or like a bad relationship, and your intuition gives you an immediate, sharp answer. The text calls those instant hits pings. But just like a computer, this download port gets clogged. Except, instead of malware, the third eye gets bogged down by the dust of analytical overthinking.
Oh, the analytical dust. That's what gets us.
It really does. You overanalyze the job offer so much that your system experiences high latency. Like, you ask an internal question, and the intuitive answer gets delayed, or it gets downgraded to this low-resolution signal just because your logic is making way too much noise.
And that latency is precisely where Angelite is introduced as a utility tool.
Okay, so how does it work there?
Well, the argument is that Angelite acts to clear the aperture of the third eye. It functions as the system-wide signal booster.
Nice.
Yeah, so by interacting with the stone, the sole architect tunes their input node past all that analytical chatter to receive direct, high-resolution data. And this data isn't described as some vague premonition. It's described as the literal architectural blueprints of your potential future.
So you're downloading the high-res blueprint of your life.
Exactly.
But downloading a massive file doesn't mean anything if you can't actually use it.
Right.
So if third eye is the download port, the fifth chakra, the throat node, is the printer. It's the interface where you translate all that internal architecture into external reality.
And this is exactly where the system breaks down for most people.
Yeah.
There's this common architectural failure, the gap between the design and the build.
Oh, absolutely.
You have a perfect blueprint in your head. You know exactly what needs to be done. But when you go to articulate it or lead your team or explain your feelings to your partner, it just comes out wrong.
The printer jams.
The printer jams.
You're in a high-stakes corporate meeting. You have the perfect strategy in your head, but the moment you open your mouth, you stumble, you get defensive, and you just say something you completely didn't mean.
Yeah.
The framework calls this a protocol error. You speak one thing, but you entirely intend another. We have all been there. But here is where I kind of have to push back a little on the mechanics of this text.
Go ahead. What's the hang-up?
Well, if I'm stressed or I'm feeling attacked in a meeting, my printer jams because my actual nervous system is firing off fight or flight signals.
Right. Cortisol's pumping.
Yeah. So how exactly does a pale glue stone fix a protocol error in real time? I mean, it's not reaching into my throat and physically moving my vocal cords.
That is the crucial question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we bridge the metaphysical with the biological?
Exactly.
So the text addresses this through the concept of the Angelite bridge. It claims the mineral connects these two distinct nodes, the input of the third eye and the output of the throat, into a single closed-loop circuit.
Okay.
But to answer your question about how it actually stops you from misspeaking out of stress, it comes down to temperature.
Wait, temperature? Are we talking literal degrees Celsius here? Because my throat isn't physically catching fire in a board meeting. How does a rock change the temperature of an argument?
Well, it changes the temperature of your nervous system. Energetically and biologically speaking, high-frequency signal reception and the stress of translation cause mental and emotional overheating.
Oh, I see.
When you are stressed in that meeting, your blood pressure rises, your skin gets flush. You are literally generating thermal noise.
Mm.
Because Angelite is physically composed of anhydrite, it is naturally cool to the touch.
Right. Okay.
The framework argues it acts as a literal, tactile, energetic heat sink. Holding it, or even just focusing on its cooling and hydrate-based frequency, interrupts that sympathetic nervous system response. It pulls the thermal noise of your ego and your anxiety and your defensiveness completely away from your communication nodes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, actually. It's a physical grounding mechanism that forces a mental reset.
Precisely.
So when you remove that heat, you aren't just reacting and talking frantically anymore. You're engaging in what the text calls structural speech.
Structural speech is just a phenomenal concept. It implies that your words are no longer just noise or reactive defense mechanisms. They are load-bearing.
Load-bearing words. I love that.
Yeah, every word you output is intentionally placed to build the architecture you downloaded.
I am so fascinated by that mental model. But let's zoom out a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to optimize our own internal hardware, to get our download port and our printer synced up and cooled down.
Right.
But what happens when the external environment around us is just a total disaster? Like, my internal laptop might be running perfectly, but the server room I'm sitting in is literally on fire.
This brings us to a highly practical categorization within the framework. It draws a really sharp contrast between tools that are load-bearing and tools that are atmospheric.
Okay, what's the difference?
So black tourmaline, for instance, is categorized as a load-bearing stone. You use that when you need heavy grounding, when you are carrying a massive emotional or physical weight.
Mm.
But Angelite is classified as strictly atmospheric.
Meaning what, exactly?
It isn't meant to carry the heavy load itself. It is meant to govern the climate of your energetic field.
Okay. Because the text calls the space you work in an atmospheric construction site, whether it's your office, your living room, or like your art studio. Mm-hmm. And this is where that heat sink protocol really scales up. Because in any high-stakes project, you have emotional friction. You've got interpersonal tension, tight deadlines, passive-aggressive emails.
All of it.
And this friction creates an energetic buildup that overheats the whole room's operating system.
Oh, definitely. If you've ever walked into a room right after two people have had a screaming match, you know exactly what that heat feels like.
Yes.
The air pressure feels heavy. It feels practically suffocating.
It is so palpable, and the analogy here is just perfect. Angelite is framed almost like thermal paste on a computer CPU, or like a high-end emotional HVAC system.
That's exactly it.
It doesn't just magically wish the anger away with, positive vibes. It systematically absorbs the thermal noise of human stress and ventilates the space, basically returning the room to a neutral, calm baseline.
And this raises a very pragmatic question about efficiency. Why does the climate of the room matter so much if you are entirely focused on your own internal build? The framework answers this by pointing out that emotional friction is a massive drag on productivity. If you are constantly navigating an overheated atmosphere, you are wasting your resources.
You're spending all your cognitive bandwidth just mitigating the chaos rather than actually executing your blueprints. Regulating the room's atmosphere buys you your brain power back.
Exactly.
Which naturally brings up a major challenge for me. Okay, so I've insulated my own system. The room is cooling down, but my boss is still yelling.
Right, the human element.
Yeah. If I'm physically calm, how does this framework actually deal with the people causing the friction without me having to say a word?
Well, it introduces what it calls the compassion framework.
Yeah.
And again, it strips away the typical sentimental, soft language we usually associate with compassion and replaces it with sheer systems logic.
Oh.
Angelite allows you to look at a colleague or family member's erratic, frustrating behavior not as a personal attack against you, but simply as a system error in their internal architecture.
So what does this all mean in practice? Because I have to admit, when I first read about this idea of detached kindness, it sounded a little, sociopathic.
That's a strong word, but I get it.
Like, does this just mean being aloof or totally ignoring people's very real problems because we're supposedly vibrating at a higher frequency and they're just glitching out?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes a lot more sense. It's a very valid concern. But the framework is careful to center this around structural survival, not superiority or apathy.
Okay, how so?
Think of it like an electrical grid. If a power line goes down in a violent storm, let's say that's your coworker having a total meltdown, you don't run over and grab the live wire with your bare hands to help them.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right, because if you do, the current travels through you and you both fry.
You have to isolate the grid so the whole city doesn't lack out.
Precisely. Taking someone else's chaos personally is defined as an emotional load error. You are taking on weight and voltage that your structure just wasn't designed to carry.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so detached kindness isn't about ignoring the down power line. It's about creating a structural gap. It's an intentional emotional distance that allows you to observe their conflict and assist safely without becoming a load-bearing pillar in their chaotic architecture.
So you basically refuse to become a conductor for their drama. You remain the atmospheric stabilizer of the room. You stay cool, and by refusing to heat up and match their frantic frequency, you actually force them to recalibrate to your standard of calm.
That's the mechanism, yeah.
That is a massive paradigm shift because it frames staying calm not just as being polite or, taking the high road, but as an active early warning defense mechanism to prevent your own structural burnout. Like if you let them redline your emotional gauge, your whole system crashes.
Exactly. And once you have stabilized those internal input and output nodes, cooled the external environment of your workspace, and insulated yourself from the system errors of others, well, you're finally ready to connect to the wider network.
Okay.
The framework refers to this next phase as the direct uplink.
The long-distance connection. Let's talk about the Wi-Fi router protocol. Because we've been hyper-focused on the daily construction site, but sometimes you really just need to step back from the physical build to look at the master plan.
Right.
And in meditative work, Angelite is used to teleport your awareness completely out of the operational weeds.
It serves as a true satellite connection.
Yeah.
When you are deep in the daily grind, just hammering away at tasks, it is incredibly easy to lose sight of why you are doing the work.
Oh, tell me about it.
So Angelite acts as the interface to query your higher intuition, your higher guides, or honestly simply your deepest subconscious. It bridges the divide between the physical realm where you are executing tasks and the intuitive realm where the final architecture is already finished and waiting.
And it unencrypts the signal. The text specifically notes that in our modern world, the static of fear, anxiety, and social expectations just scrambles our intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know we need to make a career change or move to a new city, but the data is encrypted. We can't figure out the next step. So Angelite is described as the router that provides a constant background ping of alignment. It's unencrypting that guidance, so it's raw, unfiltered, and easy to implement.
Now, what's truly unique about this router concept is that it doesn't require you to completely halt your life to go sit on a mountaintop for a month.
Right.
It maintains a steady state of intuition while you are doing the heavy lifting of reality. It's essentially a background process running parallel to your daily life.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. At the very end of the document, there is this wild block of metadata.
Oh, the correspondence system.
Yes. It's a list of metaphysical associations for how to specifically tune this router. And depending on whether you are focusing your work on the throat node or the third eye node, you are dialing into completely different networks.
Right, it's very specific.
So for the throat, it's governed by the element of air, the planet Mercury, and the archangel Raphael. But for the third eye, it shifts to the element of spirit, the planets Saturn and Neptune, and the archangel Metatron.
It's literally like looking at the specific IP addresses and routing protocols for different bodily systems. And the planetary assignments make perfect architectural sense, too.
How so?
Well, Saturn, for instance, is traditionally the planet of restriction, discipline, and structure. Assigning Saturn to the third eye means you aren't just having wild, boundless visions, you are receiving structured, disciplined blueprints.
Yes. But here's the crazy part. Despite those different IP addresses, both nodes surprisingly share the exact same animal totems. The eagle, the raven, and the spider. And both require indigo-colored candles. Just think about that for a second. The eagle makes total sense for high-altitude vision, right? It's surveying the master plan from above. The raven is historically associated with navigating the void and pulling unseen data streams into reality. But the spider is the one that really got me.
Oh, the ultimate network engineer.
Exactly. The spider is literally weaving the web, connecting the nodes, building a complex, load-bearing architecture out of seemingly nothing but its own internal resources. The specificity of these ancient associations is just incredible.
It really ties it all together.
They aren't just random animals thrown in for mystical flavor. They perfectly match the engineering metaphors we've been talking about this whole time.
They represent the synthesis of the physical build and the intuitive design. And that brings us to the core philosophy that this entire framework is ultimately offering.
Which is?
True mastery requires a dual-track approach. You absolutely must have the discipline, the grit, and the focus to build with your hands in the physical world. But without the high-fidelity connectivity to see with your soul, you are just building blindly.
Right, constructing things you don't even actually want.
Exactly. This specific protocol is presented as the tool that ensures your physical actions perfectly match your high-frequency blueprints.
It is such a profound way to look at how we move through the world. So bringing this right back to you, listening right now. Whether you are managing a massive corporate team, or you're an artist staring at a blank canvas, or you're just trying to navigate some complex family drama.
Which is an architecture project all its own.
Honestly, yes. What if you treated your emotional bandwidth and your communication like an architectural build? What if you viewed a massive misunderstanding with a friend not as a personal failure, but just a protocol error that needs a cooling heat sink?
It changes everything.
It really does. Adopting that kind of structural distance, recognizing when your printer is just jammed, could entirely change your productivity and your peace of mind.
It shifts the focus entirely from emotional reaction to systemic optimization. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, how can I clear the aperture and reduce the latency in my response?
Exactly. So we're going to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, building on this idea of our internal operating systems. If a tool like Angelite can act as a metaphysical Wi-Fi router to boost your intuitive signal and a heatsink to cool down your environment,
right,
what everyday devices or habits in your current workspace are acting as hidden signal jammers? What is acting as a thermal insulator, trapping the heat and secretly overheating your system right now without you even realizing it?
That is the daily work of the soul architect, isn't it? Identifying the static, isolating those down power lines, and clearing the channel.
Until next time, keep your download ports open, watch your temperature, and keep those printers jam-free.